The year is 1996. Legendary game designer John Romero, co-creator of Doom, Wolfenstein and Quake, the man who practically popularized the FPS genre, embarked on his most ambitious project yet, Daikatana. Backed by publisher Eidos and developed at Ion Storm, the game needed to sell 2.5 million copies just to break even. With Romero's name and the Doom legacy attached, expectations were sky high, and the marketing was bold, maybe a little bit too bold. The game's infamous ad campaign declared, "John Romero's about to make you his bitch," followed by "Suck it down." The edgy messaging didn't work that well with gamers and became a laughingstock months before the game was released. Together with absurd spending, delays, and mismanagement, by the time Daikatana finally launched, it was torn to shreds. Reviewers blasted at the game's repetitive levels, broken AI, dated graphics, and amateur design. PC Zone wrote, "Romero's reputation is based on the fact that he is the daddy of game design. Daikatana must be his illegitimate child." And the numbers were brutal. Fewer than 8,000 copies were sold. Revenue just over $270,000. Eventually, it reached 40,000 copies sold and over $1 million in revenue. All for a game with a reported $40 million budget. A financial black hole, the end of Romero's Golden Boy status, at least for a time, and a key contributor to Ion Storm's collapse. And in the years that followed, the pattern repeated again and again. Too Human, Duke Nukem Forever, APB. Each promised innovation, each collapsed under hype, delays, or bloated ambition. But even these couldn't match the chaos unleashed by gaming's newest addiction, games as a service. In the ruthless race for recurring revenue, publishers launched half-baked titles designed not to entertain, but to monetize. The result? Anthem, Suicide Squad, Skull and Bones. All crashed spectacularly, burning through $100, $200 million each. All rejected by players who saw through the glossy trailers and predatory systems. But in 2024, one game emerged that managed to do the impossible. It outflopped them all. A game that tried to be the next big live service shooter, but instead became something else entirely. Concord.
At its core, Concord is a 5v5 first-person shooter, but we set out to make it play like nothing else out there.
We were kind of craving a new experience, and we wanted to come into the genre space and provide a different option than what was out there, and we felt like we had the ideas and the drive to find something new.
Wait. That's all great promises and all, but how did we get here? It all started with a headline, April 22nd, 2021. PlayStation and Firewalk Studios announced a publishing partnership for a new, original multiplayer IP. At first glance, the announcement looked promising. Firewalk Studios was a newly formed team under Probably Monsters, itself a fresh player in the industry, founded by none other than Harold Ryan, former CEO of Bungie during the Destiny era and a veteran going back to Halo 1. Firewalk wasn't short on firepower either. Its founders, Tony Hsu, former executive at Activision, and Ryan Ellis, creative director on Destiny 2, brought serious pedigree to the table. A team of developers who envisioned Phantasy Star Online, Halo, and Destiny as the pinnacle of gaming. And the timing couldn't have been more perfect. Sony was diving headfirst into the live service gold rush. In 2022, they acquired Bungie and the Destiny IP for $3.6 billion. Studios like Haven, Fair Games, and Bungie's own Marathon reboot were quickly added to the war chest, all part of a plan to launch 12 live service games by March 2026. By 2025, the cost of these acquisitions had ballooned to over $4 billion. And this wasn't limited to new IPs. Rumors swirled of live service spin-offs from Sony's most iconic franchises: God of War, The Last of Us, Twisted Metal, and even an Horizon MMO. But while Destiny covered the looter-shooter MMO crowd, there was one genre still wide open, at least in their eyes: the hero shooter. Blizzard's Overwatch raked in over $1 billion in its first year and amassed 50 million players by year 3. Even years later, during its decline, Overwatch 2 was still pulling and is pulling 25,000 concurrent players on Steam alone. Naturally, everyone wanted in, and just as naturally, most failed. Battleborn, Lawbreakers, despite having big names behind them, Gearbox and Cliff Bleszinski, the mind behind Gears of War and Unreal, they barely scraped together 10,000 players at launch before plummeting into the triple digits. Only Paladins, a free-to-play game by iRes Studios, managed to stay afloat. Valorant quickly stole the competitive FPS crowd, Apex Legends dominated the Battle Royale space, and Team Fortress 2, the genre's fossilized grandfather, was somehow still alive and kicking. Clearly, this was an extremely competitive space where every niche was already covered, and most importantly, all of these titles went free-to-play. More on that later. And yet, behind the scenes, Firewalk was making progress. Between 2021 and 2023, they impressed Sony enough that the tech giant bought the entire studio outright for an undisclosed sum. What started as a small experiment under Probably Monsters suddenly ballooned into a full-scale AAA operation, growing to nearly 150 employees. A massive live service bet handed to a team that had never shipped a game together before. But Sony was all in. Herman Holst, head of PlayStation Studios, praised the deal, saying, "We continue to be impressed by the team's ambitions to build a modern multiplayer game that connects players in new and innovative ways." On May 24th, 2023, Concord officially debuted at the PlayStation Showcase. The trailer, a spaceship in space, some overly detailed food physics, a title card, Concord. That was it. Reactions ranged from to they put their entire marketing budget on that burger. The internet wasn't impressed. The trailer showed, well, nothing. But Sony still believed. Big names were behind it. How bad could it really be? May 30th, 2024, PlayStation State of Play. Asad Kizilbash, head of PlayStation Productions, proudly opened the show to present the newest and extremely ambitious Concord.
This team brings together some of the most talented developers in our industry, with an incredible pedigree in the online multiplayer space. We announced their first game, Concord, last year, and today, they're revealing gameplay captured in-engine on PS5. But first, here's an extended vignette introducing some of the cool characters you'll find in the Concord galaxy. Enjoy.
What followed was a slick cinematic trailer packed with blockbuster production value.
Almost dying is the best way to learn how not to die. Or something.
So do you, carry it around with you for emergency bland situations or whatever?
Hey, Mara. Don't joke about something like this.
But the Marvel-style banter, awkward one-liners, and Guardians of the Galaxy-inspired tone immediately rubbed gamers the wrong way. The comments said it all. The dialogue are like one of those introverted nerds trying to fit into society by making a joke. Or ChatGPT, write a Marvel script but change the character names. Everything else can stay the same. Or still, whoever wrote this dialogue has a promising future as a drive-thru employee. Okay, one more. Janitors of the Galaxy. Players weren't just underwhelmed, they were confused. Unlike Overwatch 2, which had gone free-to-play, Concord would launch at $40. In a saturated hero shooter market, that move felt wildly out of touch. But internally at Sony, they were still all in. Insider reports from Colin Moriarty revealed just how massive this bet really was. Concord wasn't just a game, it was meant to be a multimedia franchise, Sony's answer to Star Wars. It was Herman Holst's passion project.
The term apparently verbatim had been used that Concord is the future of PlayStation. They had such major ambition for this game that it was referred to internally as a Star Wars-like project for Sony.
But inside Firewalk, a toxic positivity reigned. Everything is fine became the default mindset. A red flag seen before at BioWare with Anthem and Rocksteady with Suicide Squad. I can corroborate the part about toxic positivity, a Kotaku senior reporter replied. Some sources I've spoken with blamed the head-in-the-sand mentality carried over from the studio's Bungie roots, a sense the game would come together because the team was too good to fail. A slow-moving train wreck wearing a smile. Then came the gameplay reveal. Founders Tony Hsiu and Ryan Ellis sat down to finally show off what Concord actually was.
Concord is a 5v5 first-person shooter set in the vibrant sci-fi universe of the Concord galaxy.
In Concord, from the moment you log on, you are part of the crew of the North Star, a group of guns for hire known in our galaxy as free gunners. Free gunners are those lucky enough to be free to roam the stars. They take high-stake jobs on worlds across wild space, where they face other fiercely competitive free gunner crews. Here's the very first look at the gameplay of Concord.
And it showed nothing new. An Overwatch clone with zero personality, generic gunplay, and uninspired arenas. Not even Overwatch 1.0, this looked like Overwatch 0.5. But even worse than the gameplay were the characters. Hero shooters live and die by their roster. Each fighter needs to be instantly recognizable, interesting, and memorable. Concord's cast felt like walking memes. A trash bin with pronouns, a Pixar reject.
Come on, let's go!
And whatever these other things are. The internet didn't hold back. Concord looks like one of those fake games that are played in the background in a movie or TV show. Clippy from Microsoft Word had more personality than every character in this trailer put together. I'm getting "how do you do, fellow kids" vibes from this trailer. It didn't feel like a game people had been waiting for, it felt like a committee-built project. Overthought, over-designed, with a philosophy that little to no one cared for. By July 2024, Concord entered early access. On Steam, it peaked at a modest 1,000 to 2,000 players. Optimists clung to hope. Maybe the PlayStation base would show up on launch day. Then the launch day came.
The game is just not interesting to people. It's not visually appealing, the gameplay doesn't look fun or interesting or like anything we haven't seen before.
It's just exactly what it appears to be and nothing more. And that's just frankly not enough to find success in this market.
Now, I want everybody to keep in mind, this game is not failing because it's bad or that it's missing content or that it's broken. No, it's because nobody's interested in it. Nobody wants to have anything to do with the game whatsoever.
On Steam, an astounding 697 concurrent players. Within days, that number plummeted below 100. On PlayStation, things were equally grim. Estimates suggest just about 25,000 copies were sold, generating about $1 million in revenue. To put that into perspective, live service games that were already considered massive failures such as Babylon's Fall, Redfall, and Suicide Squad completely blew Concord not just in copies sold, but player counts. Matchmaking in Concord quickly became impossible. The few players who stuck around blamed haters and politics for the game's failure, with threads like "haters are pathetic," as all criticism was swept under the usual umbrella of woke and DEI agendas. But no matter the angle, the truth was simple. Concord was a game nobody wanted. Even without the rainbow sprinkles, the cupcake was still made of, well, shit. And just 2 weeks after launch, Firewalk Studios announced the servers would be shut down. One of the shortest lifespans for a live service title in modern gaming. A life shorter than a housefly. Ryan Ellis, the studio head, issued a statement. At this time, we have decided to take the game offline beginning September 6, 2024, and explore options, including those that will better reach our players. While we determine the best path ahead, Concord sales will cease immediately, and we will begin to offer a full refund for all gamers who have purchased the game for PS5 or PC. Ryan Ellis, to his credit, stepped down from his position due to his own failures, taking responsibility. But not everyone took it well. Some developers lashed out on Twitter, calling critics talentless freaks, a perfectly rational meltdown to accompany a spectacular collapse. By October 29, 2024, the final nail in the coffin. Herman Holst, the man who had championed the project from the very start, broke the news. After much thought, we have determined the best path forward is to permanently sunset the game and close the studio. I want to thank all of Firewalk for their craftsmanship, creative spirit, and dedication. Without a unique selling point, without a player base, without a future, the dream was dead. Concord became a footnote in PlayStation history, and Firewalk was no more. Physical copies now sit in discount bins across the globe, a cautionary relic of trend chasing and unchecked ambition. Gameplay clips now float through YouTube and archives, digital fossils of what once was Sony's future of live service, preserved not in memory, but in mockery, in the hopes that one day it shall return. However, the story wasn't over. Behind the scenes, it was worse than anyone imagined. Development on Concord had quietly dragged on for 8 years, and according to reporting by Colin Moriarty, even as late as 2021 when Sony first signed the publishing deal, the game was still in a disastrous alpha state. Sony's grand vision of turning Concord into its next multimedia juggernaut, nothing more than a mirage, a pot of gold at the end of a rainbow that never existed. By then, it was reported that the game had already cost around $200 million, a staggering number rivaling the losses of Suicide Squad, a title that vastly outsold Concord and at least limped through an entire year of live service. Whether that $200 million was Sony's alone or shared with other investors like Probably Monsters remains unclear. But once Sony acquired Firewalk, the costs didn't stop, they ballooned. The acquisition triggered a full-scale AAA ramp-up, stimulating another $200 million in development costs, excluding the price of acquiring the Concord IP itself and the studio. That same report claimed the total bill may have reached $400 million, a number publicly disputed by analysts like Tom Warren and Christopher Dring. And to be fair, skepticism is warranted. Probably Monsters had raised $261 million in funding, but that was never earmarked exclusively for Concord. That alone casts doubt on the pre-acquisition $200 million figure. Still, when you consider Sony's likely tens of millions in acquisition costs, for reference, Insomniac was purchased for $229 million, nearly a decade of development, and the aggressive marketing push to brand Concord as a PlayStation tentpole, suddenly the higher estimates don't seem so far-fetched. After all, they had very big plans.
Every week, when you log into Concord, you will be welcomed with a new cinematic vignette that will give you a chance to see our characters off the job. They will feature ongoing narrative arcs that grow the characters' stories and relationships and unpack the broader Concord galaxy.
That is not going to happen.
But even if we are generous and trim the total to, say, $300 million, it still places Concord among the most catastrophic failures in history. With just 25,000 copies sold, it didn't just dethrone Daikatana, it surpassed every failed live service game to become the most expensive flop relative to its budget. Less than 1% of its massive budget made a return. And somehow, it managed to flop even harder than Hollywood's biggest box office bombs. Disney's John Carter and The Lone Ranger, long considered towering box office failures, lost between $200 to $274 million each, adjusted for inflation. Even The Marvels, despite being part of the once unstoppable MCU, is estimated to have lost $237 million. The result? The biggest financial flop in entertainment history. And yet, it wasn't over. Amazon's The Secret Level, a gaming-themed anthology series, had already produced an episode based on Concord. That's how deep the belief ran. And the saddest part? The episode didn't just introduce new characters, clearly set up for seasons that will now never exist. It also became the only surviving piece of the Concord universe. The episode was announced on August 20th. The game launched 3 days later and was shut down 2 weeks after. Money spent, time wasted, for no one. And here's the kicker, one final boot to Concord's corpse. Sony, and more specifically Herman Hulst, claimed the game failed due to a saturated and competitive market, completely ignoring the actual reasons players rejected it. The uninspired characters and gameplay, cringe-inducing writing, and that baffling $40 price tag. And here's the reality. The real problem was never the competitive market, not if your game actually offered something different, something worth playing, like Marvel Rivals. Announced by NetEase, a company with a rocky reputation, it was instantly written off by many as yet another Overwatch knockoff. Skepticism was high, but when launch day came, the game spoke for itself. Marvel Rivals delivered polished, fun gameplay built on a tried-and-true formula, with just the right twists. The result? Over 600,000 concurrent players at its peak on Steam. And today, despite the steady loss of players, it still maintains a steady 80 to 100,000 players daily. Not only destroying Concord's numbers by several orders of magnitude, but even outpacing Overwatch as it continues to decline. Marvel Rivals game director summed it up perfectly. There's a lot of games that come out that people are like, it's going to do well, then it flops. Or people come out and go, it's going to flop, and it succeeds amazingly. I think the trick is that you need to have that reason that people want to come and play your game. And I think Marvel Rivals does that exactly with the superheroes. When I heard the concept of the game, I was like, oh my god, I want to go be Storm in a game. I want to go be Doctor Strange in a game. And that, right there, was the critical failure of Concord. Value. Nobody wanted to pay $40 to play as bland, forgettable characters, with nothing appealing, visually or narratively. And that's how it earns its title. And it may not be the last. Following the fallout, Sony quietly cancelled multiple live service projects, 2 unannounced games, the God of War spin-off, The Last of Us Online, the Twisted Metal live service game, and yet a Spider-Man live service game. I know, crazy. Probably Monsters, the original parent of Firewalk, also took a hit. They lost millions, downsized teams, and scrapped other games in development. But Sony's live service crusade still rolling. Marathon, despite poor reception, is moving forward. And now, Sony has greenlit Team LFG, a brand new studio made up of former Bungie devs, focused on yet another team-based live service game. So while Concord is currently the most expensive flop in entertainment history, that title might not last long. Thank you for watching.